Well, I guess the best place to start here is I've got almost 40 years of bow hunting experience now. I've been doing this since I was 16 years old, and I think the reason that I got into bow hunting is because bow hunting offers something that is a challenge like nothing I've ever experienced in my life. Bow hunting just does something to you inside and then once you get involved in it, you can't put it down.
We just did it. Game over. We just killed a giant on the first day in the first setup. Oh my God, I cannot believe it. We just killed a giant. An absolute giant. I'm thinking so bad. I'm about to cry. Just finally filmed myself shooting a really nice animal on video all by myself. That's a 6-year quest right there, man.
You keep setting these little benchmarks that you try to attain. And that's kind of what today is about, or what this is about. Is this started as a fluke. I mean, I knew nothing about what I was about to get into and had no idea where it was going to come from or how it was going to find me. But a couple years ago, Karen wanted to kill a mountain lion. She's wanted to do this for many years. We've been trying to find the right outfitter to go through, and finally found one in New Mexico. This is not about a mountain lion hunt. While we're on the mountain lion hunt, they have several things mounted in their lodge, and I started noticing big elk, big mule deer, but then they had this gemsbuck, a African animal just mounted right beside an elk and a mule deer. And so I started to ask them, I was like, hey man, what's the deal with this gemsbuck? They're like, well, it's not really a gemsbuck, it's an oryx. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a different name. It's a different name because it wasn't killed in Africa, it was killed in the United States. It was killed in New Mexico. And I asked him, I said, are these things free ranging? And he said, 100%. I said, well, that's pretty cool. He said, yeah, you ought to come back and hunt with us sometime and we'll go oryx hunting. And I was like, well, tell me something about it. Number one, how many hunters do you take a year? He said they take a handful of hunters. You know, what's your success rate? 100%, he says. I was like, holy cow. But then I asked him, so what about bow hunting? I mean, I don't know the terrain or anything. And he said, well, we've never taken a bow hunter. We've never even had anyone want to try. And I was like, well, why? And he said, well, it's just really hard terrain. The oryx were brought in, I think back in the 40s or 50s, as a gift from another country. And they were put on this missile silo or missile base. And that's where they are. That's where they've been for years, and they've thrived. Well, as things have progressed, they've bled off of the missile range, and now they're into places that can be publicly hunted. And so anyhow, he's telling me about it, and he's telling me it's desert, and I'm thinking, when I think desert, I mean, I think sand, rolling dunes, and absolutely nothing, and it's great big animals. So how do you get close to them? And he kind of told me, he said, no, there's a little terrain to it. There's a little bit of vegetation, but it's, with a bow, he's like, we've had out of all of our clients that have been 100% with rifles, we've had one or two that killed them within 40, 50 yards. And I was like, well, I might try this, I mean, what are the chances of me drawing the first time? He said, not very good. I think I had about a 40% draw. Not only did I put in and draw, I mean, I drew the very first time, which was unbelievable. Well, I happened to have drawn a New Mexico elk tag the same year. So I was going to do both. So now is when the work begins, though. You're trying to figure out, what are you going to do here? Because I know nothing about an oryx. I mean, you ask me about white-tailed deer, I can tell you how things work. Ask me about an elk, I can tell you how things work. Antelope, bears. But an oryx, I had no clue. For me, when it comes to hunting, I'm looking for videos or people I can talk to. And so the very first place that I went to was YouTube. And I started scrolling through YouTube videos, and I'm looking at YouTube videos, and I'm not seeing any, I can't find anyone who's hunted an oryx outside of the missile range and been successful with a bow and arrow. I start calling people in the hunting industry, guys that I know that have killed more animals than I'll ever dream of probably. And I'm asking them, all right, so have you done this? What, tell me a little bit about, and they're like, never done it. Never tried it. Haven't even heard of anyone who did it. And I was like, okay. So finally, fall rolls around and it's time to go. So we go on the elk hunt first.
Can you still see that one on the hill? I can't believe it. No, baby. Look, he just fell dead right there. Seriously? Yeah, right there in the field.
And we're fortunate enough to fill our elk tag. And so I thought, well, I'm going to head down there and have a day or two to kind of scout around before I meet with our guide. I get down there, and the day that I get down there, I call Ben, and I tell Ben, hey, I'll meet you down there. I'm going to be there a day early. I'm going to go over and do some scouting, just look around. So Eli is my cameraman. Me and him take off, and we get down there, and I had some work to do too. So we just decided, let's get down here. Let's get set up at our hotel. Let's get everything situated. We did that. And then we decided to go out and ride around for an evening. Well, before we can take off, I get a phone call from not Ben, but Mick. Mick is Ben and John's dad. And he says, hey, I'll pick you up at 2:30 or 3:30 tomorrow morning. And I'm in town, and I heard that you're already here, so let's just get this thing rolling. And I was like, I'm not ready, man. I got to do some work tomorrow and stuff like that. So long story short, we decided to go hunting, but it was more of a scouting trip. We're going to go out and just drive around and look and see what we can see, which is typically how they do most of their rifle hunts. They drive those back roads and they see an oryx, and then they can get out and they can stalk on it, and they only got to get within a few hundred yards and they're able to get a shot and shoot an oryx. In my situation, it wasn't going to work like that. So we spent that entire first morning driving around, never saw an oryx. I was a little bit concerned that we weren't seeing very many, but at the same time, what I was seeing is that I had more terrain than what I expected. So I was seeing like there was some vegetation, there was little brushy trees and things like that. So I was like, well, this is doable. And so we rode around for half that morning. I went back that midday and got some work done. So we get back that afternoon, still haven't seen an oryx. We got about 8 or 10 hours of driving glass and stopping, looking, and we haven't seen an oryx. And then finally that afternoon, all of a sudden Mick says, there's one. And sure enough, we see our first oryx.
Yeah, but we've seen one now.
Just go on up this way. Maybe we can see
Where he goes?
where he goes.
I'm like, holy cow. I mean, you just wanted to see that first one to kind of know what you're looking for, to see if you've been looking past them or whatever. Here's this, it's a broken oryx, but it was an oryx nonetheless. And I had already made the determination in my mind that any legal oryx was the only thing that I would not shoot is what they call a brownie. And brownies are little baby, the little guys, but both bulls and cows have horns. And I'm like, I don't care. And even if it's broken, I'll have taxidermists fix it. Because I'm understanding how difficult that this is going to be, or at least what my understanding is that this is going to be extremely difficult. But he was in a place where we couldn't do anything. He had already seen the truck and everything, so he was moving out. Which at the same time, though, Mick is telling me, if you had a rifle, we would have already been done. You could have shot that oryx. And I was like, yeah, but I didn't bring a rifle. So anyhow, we jump back in the truck and drive down the road a little farther. And this time we spot a big oryx. I mean, I don't know my oryx, and I'm asking Mick every question in the world. When do they rut? Do they rub trees? What do they do? What is an oryx capable? I mean, I don't have any clue what I'm doing here, other than I'm going to try to find one, and I'm going to try to slip out of the truck and spot and stalk this thing.
So we've spent all day seeing nothing. And then in the last, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we pulled down this road and one took off running across this field, so we saw one. Then we pulled maybe 50 yards farther, and Mick said, let's look out here on this flat. And I look out there and there's one standing there. And this is a freaking nice one. Now we're debating whether or not we have enough time to try to go after this one right now or not. I'm afraid that the way he's moving pretty quick, that we might not have enough time. We might be better off to wait till in the morning and hopefully come back, find him. Then we got all morning to work on him.
Eli and I are both like on cloud nine, because we're like, check this out. So we watch him for like 20 minutes, and the whole time Mick is saying, well, why don't you guys go? And I'm like, man, we only got like 30 minutes left of daylight. I'm anticipating that in order to do this and do it correctly, it's going to take a couple hours to get in, get a whole stalk. But anyhow, he talks me into like, just get in front of him and he might walk right by you. And I was like, okay, we could try that. So we load up our stuff and we take off.
Oh, we have a better chance than we had any other time today, I can tell you that. Yeah, we gotta get to that like H thing. Over that bush right there. Okay.
And we don't go 200 yards and we don't run into an oryx. We run into a 5-foot Mojave rattlesnake. I mean, just a giant rattlesnake, and he is not happy with us being there. Eli's looking at me like, are you going to kill this thing or what is doing? And I'm like, well, we got a giant oryx, so we're just going to have to leave him alone and just keep on going. Just give him room and get around him. So we keep going. We get down to, we can't find the oryx. It's now starting to get dark. Thank God that we had carried thermocells with us, because the mosquitoes started coming. And when the mosquitoes started coming, I mean, they came on full on. And so anyhow, we decided we better just back out and come back in the morning. So we slipped back out.
Oryx day 1. Over. There's a big oryx out here somewhere. But he's lucky he's running us out of light. Let's hit the fence and walk back, Eli.
So the next morning, we're back in the same area.
So here we go. Day 2. And we're out here earlier today. We're going to try to see if we can spot one before it gets to 96 degrees again. So we're across the road, just a dirt road, from where we saw 2 of them yesterday. So we hope that we can spot one here a little earlier so we can try to get after it.
I have a good idea now what the terrain looks like. I've seen an oryx, so I know they're there. We didn't see any other hunters, so I knew that we had lots of this space to ourselves. So we pull up to this spot where Mick was like, here, we can glass from here. It'll be a good spot to really glass from. And sure enough, we weren't there 5 or 10 minutes when he says, hey, I got an oryx spotted. But they're like 2 miles off the road. I'm like, I don't care. That's actually probably better because they're not paying attention to us.
No, the mountain in the distance. The furthest
yeah,
one you
yeah,
can see.
yeah.
You see where that
Yeah.
point is?
Yeah.
On the end of the mountain, in between those trees, look there and see. If you don't see what,
Oh yeah, I see him standing there.
is that an oryx? It
Yes,
is,
sir.
isn't it?
Yeah. For sure.
Put your scope on it. And see
I will.
What you can tell it is. That one's stalkable, man.
So sure enough, we start glassing. It's not one oryx that he has glasses on. We start looking all over the hillside, and there's 5 or 6 of them. And there's a broken one. There's what looks like it's probably a male. There's a couple others that are full on grown, but can't tell whether they're males or females. But I tell Eli, okay, this is our first real chance here. What we're going to do is we're going to beeline it over to this other little knob, let Mick go up on the knob, and he can glass from there and tell us if they run off or kind of motion us which way, you know, that we can go.
Down this one, up, down another one, and up.
Top of that one, so we can see good.
I think we let you go to the top and we keep going,
Okay.
so we can start getting over there.
Okay, well,
I got a really good idea where I think they're roughly at.
We take off across the desert, and I tell you what, the desert is so deceiving. We started walking across this thing, looked like it was perfectly flat, over to this little, I call it a hill because it wasn't really, it's not a mountain by any means, but it wasn't little either. And what we couldn't see from the truck, from where our glassing point was, all the little crevices in between. And every time you went down in one of those crevices, the mosquitoes were just atrocious. The water would have pooled down in there, and the grass had just mosquitoes all over it. We would stir them up and they'd be all over us. We're 2 miles in and we top this hill, and now I'm seeing fresh oryx tracks. And even I could tell that they were oryx tracks. There weren't cattle or anything like that. And so I'm telling Eli, I'm like, we better be careful because I don't feel like we're close to the ones that we saw on that next ridge, but there could be oryx on this ridge that we don't want to bump into. So we spend a lot of time, and finally we glass and we see one of them up and moving, and we're now within, I don't know, 300-400 yards, you know, and I was like, okay, we got a chance. And they're moving around in this brushy stuff.
Okay. I can see him right here in the wide open. If I take one more step, he'll be able to see us. But if I could get just in that little depression right there, the hill would block him. I don't think he'd see us. So here's what I'm thinking is we need to go around this little knob right here. We get to that big bush right there. We should be able to just go straight across, hit that ridge, and go up, get in those bushes and go toward him. That's the plan, Stan.
And I told him, I said, all right, I think we're good to go here if we can get this done. So we back out, we slip around, we get down to the bottom of this, mosquitoes come crashing on us. We start coming up to the top of the ridge. Now we're on the ridge with the oryx, where we had glassed them. And we get with what I felt like I told Eli, I was like, I believe we're within 100 to 150 yards of one of them. And I said, but I can't see any of them. I don't really know. We're just going to have to go super slow.
See this big patch of trees? I think they're just there. My point is we're gonna have to be really careful.
So it's taken us about 3.5, 4 hours to get to this point, to get in, and we started at like 7 in the morning. It's like 11 o'clock now. And so we're now like on the ridge with them. I tell him, I was like, we better get a drink. Remember, this is the desert and it's starting to get warm, and it's starting to warm up fast. So we decide we better get a drink, better be done, get our packs back on, and then we're gonna move really slow. And Eli goes to take a drink, and I look over his shoulder as he's facing me, and I see an oryx walk by. And I'm like, holy cow, don't move. And I was like, and he's like, what? And I'm like, I just saw an oryx walk by at like 80, 85 yards. He's going from left to right. And he's like, you're kidding me. I'm like, no, I'm dead serious, man. We are like on them, right here with them. So the two of us grab all of our stuff, put it in our packs, and we start easing up there, because now that they're on their feet, I'm like, we could get right in the middle of them is what I'm hoping. And and you can walk super quietly because it's sandy on the ground. So we start slipping up in there, and sure enough, I see another one walk by. This time it's at like 55, 60 yards, but it goes out of sight, and I told Eli, I was like, we got a chance here, dude. Just stay right behind me, right on over my shoulder, because the one that I just saw went to my right a little bit, and I think I can slip up here. Sure enough, I spot the Oryx at like 55, 60 yards. I'm just not a long distance shooter, so I'm not even considering taking a shot. So we ease over behind some brush, and we were gonna try, and I told him, we get to that point of brush right there, I should be 40 yards.
The goal here, see him, if we can see him. Then if we can get within 40 yards, then wait for him to stand up. I gotta pray he's not still standing there now, because he was facing us.
And so we start creeping up. I can see the tail end of an Oryx. I see its tail flickering. And so we get up to that spot. Right when we get to that spot, I've got an arrow knocked. I mean, I'm ready to full on go. I look at Eli, he's got the camera ready. We're gonna try to get a shot. The Oryx is feeding kind of straight away, so it doesn't see us. So I step out from behind the brush so that I can come to full draw. When I step out from behind the brush, we didn't realize we'd walked up on two other Oryx that are only like 20 yards away, 15 yards away. We had no idea they were right here. And then there was another one behind the other one. Well, these see us and they take off running. But what do you do with an Oryx? I have no idea. So I tried to meh, and it did, it worked. It stopped. I mean, I just made a noise and it stopped. It's standing there. I mean, I got like split second time to figure out what I'm gonna do. I'm like 30 yards, you know. I mean, I think she at the time, I didn't know whether it was a she or a he. All I know is it's got big spiral horns, and I'm shooting this sucker. So I'm at full draw. It stops at like 30, 35, and I let an arrow fly.
We got us a freaking Oryx, dude. We arrowed an Oryx. Oh my God. I'm shaking so freaking bad. It's unreal. Kyle. Eli. Dude, I can't believe we just did that. Oh, I had no idea that one was there. I was dead set on getting a shot at that one. And so and he was 55 back there, so I knew I got to 40. And then I look over and this one is right here.
Oh my gosh. You smoked it. Holy smokes, man.
I'll never forget the shaking, because it was so uncontrollable that I couldn't believe it, because everyone had told us that this couldn't be done, that they hadn't seen this done. And we still to this day haven't. If you can find another video on YouTube of someone shooting an Oryx in the States off of the missile silo, off the missile range with a bow and arrow, send it to us, because I just want to see it. I mean, I think it's really cool. Having done what we did, Eli and I are like on cloud 9. And so we make a phone call to Mick to let him know, because we know he's 2.5 miles away, sitting on top of a ridge. I know he can't see what's going on.
It's laying here 10 yards from me.
A nice one?
Yes, sir. I don't know if it's a giant one, but it's it's got 3-foot horns or something like that. I ain't even touched it yet. I don't care. It's a freaking Oryx, dude, with a bow and arrow.
I know, badass. I'll have to bring the pack rings and head that way, man.
Yeah, or bring some mules.
I will say this. Killing the Oryx is probably one of the defining moments of my bow hunting career, having stalked to within 30 yards of an Oryx from 2.5 miles away with only a 3-day hunt, was something to be done.
Come with us, because I'm going to touch my Oryx for the first time. Holy cow. Man, are they cool looking or what? Oh my gosh. I don't know what a big one is, but I can tell you this much. That one's big enough. Look at that. I never dreamed that I would get this done. I don't know how long those are. Now, it's legal to kill a male or a female, and I can tell you this is a female, and I guess these are thinner. There was a big male in the bunch, but there was also a big male that was broken about like, and then there was one with no horns. So there was kind of a little bit of everything. Like I said, I don't care whether it's a giant. I would have shot one smaller than this.
But the pack out was probably one of the craziest things I've ever been a part of. It was now 103 degrees because I shoot it like right around noon. And by 1 o'clock, the temperatures have soared. By the time he gets there with our packs, we had packs with us, but we only had packs to carry our camera gear. So he brought us in 3 frame packs, and we're gonna pack this thing out. And we got to get it in game bags. We didn't lose a drop of meat though. But at the same time, it took me having to carry a hind quarter, a front shoulder, the cape, and all the gear that I had on me all in one shot. And Eli and them, thank God that I had Eli with me, because he carried either a hind quarter or a front shoulder. I can't remember which that I gave him. And we boned them out so that we would have less weight. It was one of the most 2.5 hour, just a testament of, because we were trying to go in a hurry, so we're packing all this weight and we're just going as fast as we can. You know, and I look back at it now, I mean, so many people have asked me, how was it, you know, and the eating of an oryx is unbelievable. They're one of the best pieces of food that I've ever, if not the best wild meat I've ever had. But what I would tell someone that, you know, for those of you thinking about doing it, do it. Definitely do it. Get a hold of New Mexico Professional Big Game Hunting Incorporated. These guys know what they're doing. And they'll put you on the oryx. It'll be up to you though to try to get a shot. But I'm telling you right now, it's worth doing. They're worth eating, and the challenge is worth trying to hunt them.